If someone is wearing a Mangal Sutra, you would automatically understand that person is married. Interestingly, whenever I see a woman wearing a toe ring, मुझे वो चांदी का एक छोटा सा adornment नहीं दिखता. You will hardly ever see a bichya made in gold. It will be probably always silver. Yeah, silver. I remember my mother, whenever she would change her toe rings, she would collect the rest of them in a small box. Yeah. Jewelry is not just a piece of adornment. It is also, again, status, and it's something which shows transition. As someone deeply rooted in craft and design, I started looking at jewelry as anthropology worn on the body. A lot of people want to buy things which are Instagrammable.
Our guest today is Anupma Dutt, a fashion designer, researcher, and an educator with 30 years of experience in fashion designing and apparel. She is currently an associate professor at the Indian Institute of Art and Design and has collaborated with multiple brands like Meena Bazaar, Kalpana, Khamir, and Anokhi. Her research work explores Fulkari embroidery, Punjabi salwar, and is currently working on Indian celebration jewelry. Anupma, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome on our New York's Jewelry Podcast.
Thank you.
When you look at someone wearing jewelry, what do you see? Decoration? Style? So today's guest is going to tell you something deeper, that the Indian jewelry is more than a language. A silent storyteller that communicates who you are, where are you from, and what moment you are living in. Welcome to New York's Jewelry Podcast. I am Hina, and today we are decoding the cultural stories hidden in plain sight. You mentioned that jewelry in India functions as cultural language. Can you break down that for us? Why is it not just a language, more than just a decoration?
So when I say that jewelry is a cultural language, I mean to say that it works as a system of symbols which communities instinctively understand. एक शांत जुबान है जो हर किसी को समझ में आती है. We understand it very well. जैसे जुबान में एक ग्रामर है, एक vocabulary है, एक context है. Jewelry में material है. The material works as noun, the placement works as grammar, and जो उसका कॉन्टेक्स्ट बनता है वो उस रिचुअल से बनता है. वो कहाँ पहनी गई, कब पहनी गई, that puts in the context.
Correct.
So a lot of it will convey to you without saying what you want to understand. If someone is wearing a Mangal Sutra, you would automatically understand that person is married.
Right.
And similarly, it happens with the kinds of bangles that someone is wearing. It will tell you a complete story.
Correct.
And if you actually start looking at it philosophically, the stories are really, really warming, touching, and these are all salvage. Yeah, you can just look at people and you know there is a story behind it.
Right.
It can leave you inquisitive. It can leave you with questions. But yeah, there's a story. Whenever me or someone else is wearing a traditional jewelry, even if it's a contemporary piece, I wouldn't just say it for the traditional ones. You automatically understand where the person is coming from.
Correct.
What is the context? Why is someone wearing that particular jewelry at that time? Who are we? That is also said by jewelry and the garments. Yeah, that's why I feel that it's a language.
So let's start with something like most of us have seen but never questioned. A simple toe ring, जिसको हम generally बिछिया बोलते हैं. अलग-अलग regions and अलग-अलग areas में इसको differently बोला जाता है, right? So what do you think is the story behind a woman wearing a simple toe ring without her saying a word about it?
Interestingly, whenever I see a woman wearing a toe ring, मुझे वो चांदी का एक छोटा सा adornment नहीं दिखता. वो कहानियाँ जो मुझे कभी सुनाई नहीं गई, सिर्फ मैंने महसूस की हैं. I remember my mother, my grandmother, everybody wearing those toe rings forever.
Right.
And silently through the rituals, through the ways they were being used, बदलना हर एक त्योहार पे और हमेशा एक married woman के पैर में उनका होना, it conveys the sanctity of marriage that Hindus have always maintained.
Right.
So it is not just a ring for them. It is something which is so deeply rooted there. And interestingly, you will hardly ever see a bichya made in gold. It will be probably always silver. Yeah.
Silver.
So what happens is that gold is generally supposed to be sacred.
Right.
It symbolizes divinity. So कमर के नीचे जनरली गोल्ड पहना नहीं जाता है. So in the toes, when you're wearing silver, it is supposed to keep you grounded. So it is never in gold. silver is supposed to conduct energy and calmness, and it's supposed to keep you grounded. So yeah, that generally you will see it in worn in silver. Still, there would be status. You'll see people wearing different kinds of bichiyas, even in a simple, humble toe ring. There'll be varieties of things. So, एक छोटी सी चीज में you have status, you have divinity, you have energy, you have everything spelt out through just one toe ring.
Interesting.
Yeah. I remember my mother, whenever she would change her toe rings, she would collect the rest of them in a small box. Yeah. And I'm sure there were so many stories with all of those toe rings. And yeah, I think he'd agree. Yes.
Was there a moment in your own life or during the research time where you realized that, jewelry is communicating something more deeper than just beauty? So what shifted your perspective?
I grew up seeing jewelry around me. For the longest time, they were just pieces. I would admire them for the beauty and maybe the glitter that it had. But it was later when I started noticing patterns. There were jewelry pieces which were specifically taken out during weddings.
Right.
It was an instance when I saw someone in my close family passing away, and the widow, there was a ritual where she took off some jewelry. And so for me, jewelry is not just a piece of adornment. It is also, again, status. And it's something which shows transition. It is like a story. It is like ek puri, like my dadi's jewelry, my dadi's bangle. It was not just about the weight of the gold.
Right.
It was about the emotional weight that it carried.
Yeah.
It was how those simple, I still have those bangles etched in my mind. How those simple bangles, the noise those simple bangles used to make, and because it was gold, it was a different kind of noise that it would make. That had so much charm in it. And how on different occasions she would take out her jewelry box, take out her favorite pieces, either give it to one of her daughter-in-laws or her daughters to wear. Yeah, that was an experience in itself. And that's when I started understanding the language of jewelry, the importance of those pieces.
There is not just beauty and more than that. Much more than that.
For me now, it is more than that. Much more than that. I never look at it as a piece of... Obviously, when you're buying it, when you're wearing it, you think of, हाँ ठीक है, आपके garment से match करना चाहिए, occasion से match करना चाहिए. But again, at that point also, it's still conveying a message. I'll not wear a certain kind of jewelry to office. I'll not wear a certain kind of jewelry to weddings. So yes, all that said something. So again, yeah.
All right.
As someone deeply rooted in craft and design, I started looking at jewelry as anthropology worn on the body.
So Mangal Sutra, one of the most recognized pieces of the Indian bridal jewelry, right? But what I feel is, like, personally, most of us don't know the full story. Like, what is it? What does it signify? So can you please share your perspective on that?
Yeah, I guess Mangal Sutra is such an important part of a bride's jewelry. And so traditionally, Mangal Sutra, if you've ever noticed, has got two strings of black beads.
Correct.
Put in gold, and then a gold string along with that.
Right.
That is the traditional way of making a Mangal Sutra. So there is a significance of those two strings. It's bringing together two families. The black beads are to ward off any evil eyes from the marriage. The gold signifies the prosperity, the divinity also. And the Mangal Sutra brings together two families. It's not just about an individual getting married to another individual. Mm-hmm. It's two families coming together, and the Mangal Sutra signifies that. Though again, at the same time, I would say that a Mangal Sutra has different manifestations in different parts of the country. And everywhere, the concept is same. Mangal Sutra is supposed to bring together two families and to ward off any evil from their lives and to keep them, it's like a blessing.
Right.
And so that is the prime significance of Mangal Sutra.
You said materials, forms and techniques often reveal like where the wearer comes from, right? So can you walk us through an example through that? And for example, if I showed you a piece of jewelry, right? So how will you differentiate that it is from Rajasthan or Bengal or like other different states?
So I do understand because of trade, a lot of things are exchanged, but still every region will have a very distinctive cultural language, a very distinctive design language, and the identity comes from there. But often this design language that place would have will come from the geography, the natural environment of that area.
Right.
Like if you see in Bengal, they use conch shells and they use red bangles for their, brides.
Correct.
So if you go back and look at the cultural language of Bengal, white and red is a very auspicious color combination that they use.
Agree.
So white comes from the conch shells, which are supposed to be very auspicious. They're used in all pujas. The noise they make is very important. So the bangles for a bride are made of conch shells, and the red color of the combination of the bangles that they get is white and red. The red color is symbolic of abundance, fertility, and that is there. Red color, because it's fertility and abundance, would sort of universally found in all parts of India.
Right.
The language of jewelry in Bengal is very different from what you see in, say, Rajasthan. It's very bold over there. Kundans and heavy silver jewelry. Even they have white bangles and red bangles. The bangles go up to the upper arm, and it makes a different kind of noise, and the different ways of wearing it. The number of bangles also symbolizes something. There are places where they wear only 9 churis, 9 bangles, 9 glass bangles after marriage. Some places only wear 12 churis after marriage. So इस तरह के भी बहुत सारे traditions हैं. South में, Kerala में, because religion is very important, you'll generally see temple jewelry. We've started calling it temple jewelry.
Right.
It's very symbolic to Kerala, South India.
South India.
And that is how it is. And now it has started happening because of media and internet and everything, that people have started finding joy in buying jewelry from different places.
Right.
So, yes, you will find even Northeast jewelry here, in somebody in Delhi having those 24 karat gold jewelry from Shillong. But earlier it was very subjective to that area. You won't generally find it anywhere.
Now considering digital India and
digital India and
accessibility, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that jewelry becomes a way of carrying one's own roots, right? Even when somebody is living far away from their homes. So in today's global Indian diaspora, how do you see this playing it out?
So it's not just today. It has been happening ever since. People who move abroad, they leave a lot of their stuffs here. Limitation of luggage and all that stuff, but they still carry a few things which have some emotional bonding to their roots. And even if they're moving in a very westernized world, they're wearing different kind of jewelries when they're going to offices, something very delicate. But on festivities, during weddings and all, what comes out of their closets is something which is very traditional, which has been worn and passed on by their mothers, their grandmothers,
right,
or maybe gifted to them, and which holds the emotional value more than the material value of that piece of jewelry. The emotional value carries more weight, and so it is always a connection to their roots. It's always a thing which gives them joy, which takes them back to their younger self.
Yeah.
Which takes them back to the times they spent with their loved ones. There's so many things. When I envision it, I think about it. I think how a grandmother would have passed on her own, heirlooms to the granddaughter, and she would have preserved it inside her
for so many years.
Yeah. And all those stories when the girl opens it, out of question that she wouldn't go back to that time. सोचेगी जरूर क्या दिया था. So that is important.
So let's talk about materials for a moment. Silver, gold, conch shell. So how do these materials differentiate from each other? What do they symbolize?
Differentiate to है ही. Silver is silver, gold is gold, conch shell is conch shell. But there are different symbolic meanings to this.
Correct.
Like gold is very, very prominent in down south. It is prominent in north as well. But in south, it's like it holds a different weightage.
Right.
They'll generally load their daughters with gold. And I think this also comes from they worship a lot. They have a lot of temples.
Right.
So their jewelry also has a similar architectural designs translated in the jewelry. And it's supposed to be so auspicious that they actually give a lot of gold to their granddaughters, daughters, daughters-in-law, and
The woman, basically.
yeah, women get a lot of gold, but at the same time, the men also wear quite a lot of gold there.
Correct.
Silver is probably because of its cooling properties or what, is very common in Jaipur, in Rajasthan, and conch shells have their own importance down Bengal. If you go towards Shillong, you see 24 karat gold, which is not practiced anywhere else in India. And so there are different ways. These metals also manifest in different shapes and in different kind of design languages in different areas. Lakh is used a lot in Rajasthan. Then
Okay.
they have special Hyderabadi pearls, which you see in Telangana. So everywhere there is a different material native to that area, probably,
Right.
which is used in their own design language. And yes, so that is why this is also inherited and it's supposed to be auspicious in that area. And also regions have their own favorites.
So we have discussed enough about the materials, Mangal Sutra, the toe rings, and the cultural relevance as well. And that was really insightful. So now I would like to know more about the younger generation. Like, these days, younger generation are preferring very minimal jewelry, very, let's say lighter Mangal Sutras. So how do you see this transmission as erosion or like evolution?
So in India, or even across the world, when it comes to traditional jewelry, I don't look at it as a design thing. It is more of a philosophical construct, thought over, designed per requirement through their cultural values, and then passed on to the generations. So now the newer generation wants to adapt. जब पहले बनती थी तो उस टाइम के उस रियान के हिसाब से थी, आज वो नई चीज है, एंड जो आज के लोग हैं उनको अपने हिसाब से चाहिए, उनकी जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं वो डिफरेंट हो गई हैं. दे हैव ग्रोन इनटू अ डिफरेंट डायरेक्शन. आई डोंट लुक एट इट एज something which is harming or erosion is happening. To me, it's a point of negotiation. We're still negotiating between the old and the new.
Right.
And I feel that if they're converting a Mangal Sutra into a bracelet, that doesn't mean that they're totally, away from their traditions. It's still rooted there. They're just adapting it to the present days. They're adapting it for their own convenience, but their tradition is still there. So a lot of things, maybe, today women wear a lot of shoes, maybe the toe rings hamper it. If they wear too many bangles and the noise is making a sound which is conspicuous in her office, so obviously she should not wear it.
Right.
But maybe in the festivities, during weddings, during special
More celebration jewelry,
it will come out. और ये सारी चीजें important है. इसलिए adaptation is, I will not say it's an erosion. I think it's an evolution as required to the present day. So yeah,
That's interesting. So when you look at how Indian jewelry is worn and understood today versus, let's say, 50 years ago, so what do you think is being lost and rediscovered in interesting ways?
So what is being lost is an automatic understanding. What is being discovered, rediscovered, is an intentional learning. And what I feel is important is जो नई generation है वो आपसे question करती है why. So instead of thinking it as they're acting as rebel, we can actually deepen their appreciation of the craft, the value, the importance.
Creativity.
Yeah, everything. They have to understand the deep meaning of these cultural values that these pieces of art hold.
That's interesting. So what do you think? How has social media changed the way people choose and style jewelry?
I think a lot has changed. A lot of it has changed. I think one milestone was COVID. That changed everything. The way you style yourself, the way you talk about things, and the way you present yourself, that has changed. And that has also, during that period, probably something transitioned.
Yeah.
And which has really changed people in the way they present themselves. So in terms of jewelry, I see that was one milestone. The other thing is the women now are becoming busier than what they were. Not that I totally regard homemakers. I respect them a lot. So, and I don't think we can compare, working women or homemakers. They're two different segments, and I have respect for both of them. I feel the working women want to adapt to using jewelry in their own ways, which complement their style, which complement their working environment, which also complement the way they want to present themselves. Because a lot of MNCs are here, a lot of foreigners are also there in the offices who would definitely not value the large pieces of jewelry that has Indianness to it. So yes, they're adapting to those newer environments. They're adapting to their newer paradigms. So, that is taking a leap ahead, and that is why they're moving to softer jewelry pieces and materials which look more in sync with the environment that they are in and are easy to carry. Also, I feel a lot of people want to buy things which are Instagrammable and which they can, they're affordable because they won't have to wear it many a times on the social media. Maybe they can combine it differently for a different shoot or a different picture that they post on Instagram. So that has become a very important thing. People have started buying a lot of imitation jewelry because gold is beyond everybody's reach.
Right.
So people now want to still show that they've got nice jewelry pieces, but instead of investing on gold, they're investing on artificial pieces. But one thing still remains very important. They don't want to buy imitation jewelry which looks like imitation jewelry. It has to look like, premium. Gold has to look like gold, and any gold imitation jewelry has to look like pure gold. And if it's silver, it has to look like pure silver. So yeah, that is there. But definitely the demand of imitation jewelry has risen because of
social media.
Yeah.
So last but not the least question, Anupma. So as far as your experience is considered, so how do you think the jewelry industry is going to shape up in the next 20-30 years?
I'd say 20-30 साल बाद मेरी बेटी या उसकी बेटी क्या पहनेगी? Will she hold on to stories or will she hold on to pieces? Will she hold on to emotions or will she hold on to her requirements? I don't know. But if anything would be there, it definitely would be the story. कहानियाँ तो हमेशा पहने, for sure.
Wow. Anupma, thank you for showing us that jewelry isn't just something what we wear. It's about who we are, where are we from, and what we are carrying forward. So next time, before you see a toe ring, a bangle, a Mangal Sutra, take a pose. There's a story behind it, and you just learned how to read it. So guys, if you love this episode, do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And stay tuned for such upcoming interesting podcasts.